So we went up to where I'd shot it, and when I made the shot, it was quartering away pretty hard. But I still had put the crosshairs right between that back shoulder, and felt confident in the shot that I had made. And so it took us a little while even to find any blood to be able to track it. So for a few minutes, there was kind of that nerve-wracking feeling of, man, I hope I didn't miss. But
oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
All right, back for another Fall Obsession Podcast episode here on whatever network you guys might be viewing or streaming on. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Our Fall Obsession Podcast is driven by Ridge Rock Hunt Company, and the fine folks over there will talk more about Derek and Lacey and what they do later on today. I'm Sam. I'm one of your podcast hosts. Thank you guys for tuning in again. On here with our other podcast host and Fall Obsession Vice President up in Minnesota, Drew Tordick. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, Sam. How's it going today?
Good, man. Just fighting this Texas heat down here. It's getting a little ridiculous. I'm ready for fall.
Yeah, it's been warm up here too. We finally had a couple of cool nights, but overall it's been pretty warm.
Yeah, man. I'm ready for hunting season. I know we've done plenty of podcasts recently about our prep work, and I'm sure there'll be more to come on that and everything. But definitely feeling the deer season itch at this point here, kind of early to mid-August, it seems like. So.
Yeah.
But kind of what I wanted to start our discussion with actually is an experience that you just had actually down in my neck of the woods, getting to go on your very first axis deer hunt, is my understanding, your very first at least. So kind of wanted to dive in and unpack some of that today on the podcast. I know we were originally kind of sitting on this one for a little bit because we were hoping that we might get your guide to be able to join us, and I still hope that we'll be able to get him on the podcast, but we wanted to go ahead and kind of dive in and unpack some of that, and we might also have some more axis deer content coming to the podcast in the near future as well. So kind of wanted to lead into all that with your experience and talk about how that went for you.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually picked the hunt up from a Houston Safari Club auction a couple years ago now. And had been a bucket list hunt of mine, something I'd kind of always wanted to do. Really just intrigued by the axis deer hunt, the fact that you hunt them in the middle of the summer, the fact that they have spots on them, which for a whitetail hunter is kind of crazy to be shooting a deer with spots on it. So it was just something that I'd kind of always wanted to do. Had the chance to pick up a hunt on the Houston Safari Club, and went out to a place called Joshua Creek Ranch outside of San Antonio, and spent 3 days out there hunting with them. And man, I had a great time. Saw so many deer, and just had a great overall experience.
That's awesome. Always good to hear, that you have an experience like that, something that you'll remember and that was enjoyable for you, especially when it's a bucket list item and that kind of thing. So that's cool. When did this hunt take place specifically? Because I know it was a little while ago now.
Yeah, I think it was the end of May, like the last weekend of May, I think is when I went out.
So you got down here before it got too crazy hot, I guess, or what was the weather like while you were hunting down here?
While I was down here, it was pretty nice. Comparatively for Texas, low to mid 90s during the peak of the day, but evenings and the rest of the day was pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good. So kind of lead us into it as far as arriving there, kind of your expectations versus reality, and leading into your experience down here.
Yeah. So I actually had no expectations going into the hunt. When I purchased the hunt, the only reason that I sort of decided to go with this outfitter as an option was because it was listed as a free range hunt and one of the best free range hunts in Texas or in the U.S. And so it really had the opportunity to be a good hunt. Then sort of the couple weeks leading up to it, I talked to some friends who had other friends down in Texas, and sort of through the grapevine heard that, Joshua Creek was an awesome place to actually have a potential or a shot at a potentially pretty large animal. So to be able to, shoot that trophy class deer that you're looking for, the odds are pretty high out there. And so I kind of went into it with, maybe we'll see a few deer and there'll be some nice ones around, but I just wasn't prepared for the number of deer that were around that place and that I was going to see. Being used to hunting whitetails in the Midwest, it's, an average season, maybe you see 20 deer walk by your stand. And I think the first night out there, I probably had more than that out walking around. And so it's, just fun to see them out there walking for me and to see everything else. Bunch of turkeys, a bunch of ducks. So real cool experience.
Awesome. Now, were the axis deer pretty skittish? Because I've hunted axis before, but we went on a whitetail hunt that year, and it was on a ranch that had axis on it, and we ended up doing kind of a partial axis hunt at the time, but we were mainly there for whitetail. So all this to say is it was later in the year, like in the fall. So I haven't experienced myself even hunting them in the summer. What was their behavior like? Were they skittish, or were you able to get on them pretty good?
Sure. So they are actually rutting in May is one of their, I guess they have 2 ruts was the way it was explained to me throughout the hunt. And the better one is in May. So you see them out there chasing does and, doing typical buck breeding behavior. Also traveling to and from feed. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, pretty similar behavior to the whitetails, as far as, an uneducated person to it would say, but yeah, pretty similar.
Gotcha. Very cool. So how did your hunt transpire? Because I'm sure, obviously, if people have clicked on this podcast, they've probably seen a picture of you with an axis deer. So they know that you were successful in your trip. How did the hunt where you bagged your axis, how'd that transpire?
Yeah, I had actually just gotten settled in at the ranch, and was going to head out on my first hunt for the evening. And as we were driving out to the blind that I was going to sit in that night, I actually spotted this buck chasing this doe, probably about 60 yards away from where we were driving. So, had an opportunity to make a shot on that. And the guide, I think his exact words were, you probably want to shoot that one. So, even though it was only like 20 minutes into the hunt and I hadn't even gotten to the stand yet, with a guide who tells you don't want to pass up that opportunity, it was something that I didn't pass up. And so I shot that buck like 20 minutes into the hunt. Yeah, it was awesome.
So 20 minutes in, not even to the stand, you put one on the ground. How far was your shot?
I want to say 40 yards, maybe.
40 yards. Like I can imagine the excitement, the thrill in the moment. From the time you get there to this happening being so fast, adrenaline's pumping. But then what? Are you bummed that you tagged one out so quick, or were you happy to walk up on that thing?
So, interesting story, right? I was shooting a 7mm, which is, I don't want to call it overkill for that, but it's definitely a large enough round.
Oh yeah.
I've been shooting those copper monoliths, so I'm not going to even use the brand name because it doesn't matter. But when you're shooting copper, they don't seem to really expand quite as much because they're staying together in one piece, right? So you don't have quite the exit wound that you do when you're shooting traditional lead. So we went up to where I'd shot it, and when I made the shot, it was quartering away pretty hard, but I still had put the crosshairs right between that back shoulder, and felt confident in the shot that I had made. And so it took us a little while even to find any blood to be able to track it. So, for a few minutes, there was kind of that nerve-wracking feeling of, man, I hope I didn't miss. But once we found blood, overall it went probably 30 yards, 40 yards before it piled up.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but I mean, you and I experienced it when we were out at that hunt in San Angelo.
Yeah.
I mean, tracking whitetails or even anything, tracking blood in that Texas hill country is pretty tough. Just the ground and everything. I don't know. I personally struggle to see blood on it. So
Man, and I don't know what it is. Like I know we've talked about that over time throughout the podcast, and our second podcast episode we ever recorded, episode 2, or that we published, that is, was Nick Powell and myself recapping that hunt from 2019. But the deer didn't bleed, and it wasn't just like one or two or just a weird shot here or there. It was bow, rifle, everybody all weekend long. Deer just didn't bleed, or you couldn't find blood. You just had to wander around until you found it. I don't know, it must be a Texas thing or something, if you're having that problem on an axis deer too. Holy cow, man, especially with a 7 mil.
Yeah, but I mean, once we got, it was probably 20 yards in, and I mean, that wound channel opened up and you could see where every heartbeat or every breath or whatever it was, there's a big spot. And so,
yeah,
it just kind of prove the point that you got to watch what way they run out and not really rely on being able to find blood right where you shoot them, but being able to sort of use other things to track it for a little while.
And man, that's probably, if I have a weak spot in tracking, that's probably it, because I second guess myself whenever I'll shoot a deer or shoot an animal, whatever it may be, and I'll watch him run into the brush. I'm like, all right, he went right there. And then I'll walk up there and there's like 2 trails that I didn't know about. It's like, okay, which one was he on? Was he on this one or this one? And then I start second guessing everything, and then I have no idea where he even went after that. I don't know. I lose track of everything if I don't have blood like that, and it just, I don't know. That's probably my weakness as a tracker. I can find blood for you. Like I'll find a speck of blood anywhere, but if there's no blood, find somebody else to find your deer, man.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, so last year I actually had that whitetail that I shot here in the metro.
Oh, yeah.
I think we tracked it 1.5 miles, maybe even more, before we kind of gave up for the first time. And then I tracked it another couple miles through the cattails and stuff. But, man, following just like a drop of blood here or a drop of blood there, or actually just fresh prints in the mud, that stuff was way easier for me than being able to track something on that dry, dusty hill country terrain where, I mean, there's deer tracks around, but which one is fresh? And that blood just kind of blends in for me on that.
Yeah.
And, it's not specific to Texas. I have trouble tracking them at points in Minnesota too. I don't know what it is. I just don't see the blood that well. I've had a buddy, my buddy Cody, on that metro hunt that we were on last year, where we carried that doe out on our shoulders with that log. After I shot that doe, I had to have him come help me in. I mean, that thing was 20 yards from my stand, and I probably almost saw where it dropped, but you couldn't find any blood to track exactly where it was at.
Yeah. Man, we had, like, even Todd and I, when he was down here a couple weeks ago also, to hunt pigs down here, we had a similar experience, and I know he's talked about it recently on our podcast, but he had a shot the first evening out there at a really nice sized boar. And I think just with how close that boar was and the rifle he was using, the shot landed a little high in kind of no man's land on that pig. And I mean, you can ask Todd. We wandered around those woods for quite a while trying to find blood or any kind of sign of him. We could see where he turned after the initial shot, but after that, again, like you said, that dry, dusty Texas soil, we couldn't find anything. It was just, and every trail you walk down as you start walking into the brush, every trail turns into 10 more, and there's no telling where he went after a certain point, so. But anyway, getting back to your axis buck, so this thing buries up and everything. You walk up on those tall Texas tines. What are your thoughts?
Man, I was surprised. They're huge. I mean, the body is not much bigger than what I'm used to seeing in a really big whitetail buck around here. But the difference in, antler size is crazy. And just how beat up they are from fighting, from having those 2 ruts a year. And it was pretty cool to see all the different scars all over him and on his face, on his side and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Old warrior.
Yep. Yep. Luckily, he didn't have any broken tines, but you could tell he was a fighter.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always good to kill a dominant, mature buck like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so, having tagged out that first day right away, I actually just kept hunting as if I still had the opportunity to kill another buck. But I did have the opportunity to kill another doe. So it was a buck and a doe. So I did take that opportunity the second or third night. But, the other times I was just sitting out there recording video, taking pictures, just kind of enjoying being able to be surrounded by deer.
Yeah.
It's kind of actually a lot nicer, I'd say, almost being able to know that the pressure was off. You didn't have to worry about putting one down, that it was already done for the trip, and just being able to sit back and relax and just enjoy watching everything walk around was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That was what I was going to ask you next, was how you spent the rest of your weekend. So glad you got to make good use of your time for sure. So
yeah, it's always nice too when you go out and you sit quite a few more times. You put some more hours in the stand, and there's not another one that you would have shot that would have been better than what you shot. Even 20 minutes into the hunt, that's kind of the thing that goes through your mind is, man, if I shoot one this early, what if I see one bigger later? And with the exception of one really cool standout buck that I saw, there wasn't even another one that I would have thought about shooting the rest of the trip. They were definitely trophies, right? But it wasn't to the point where it was like, man, I wish I would have shot that one. It was like, oh, that one's probably about the same size as the one I shot. That's pretty cool to see that. There's definitely a big population out there.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun.
yeah, that's always the interesting side of hunting, no matter what it is. You take a shot at one early, you always have that thought in the back of your mind. But honestly, I think if unless you are truly committed to trophy hunting, I think if you have a shot on a good deer day one, man, that old saying, don't pass on the first day what you shoot on the last. You gotta have that balance. You gotta keep that in mind, because the last thing you want, especially on a hunt where you travel a long way for, the last thing you want is to go home empty-handed. So
yeah, and I guess the other cool buck that I was looking at, the one that it's definitely like a different kind of trophy. It's an interesting deer. The one side was only, I don't know, maybe 4 inches, 5 inches long. It was just like straight down, just a little double hook right back to its like forehead. And then the other side was, I'm probably 3 or 4 inches bigger than the one that I shot, but only on that one side. He was huge.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool to see.
It's kind of a cold buck then, huh?
He definitely would have been, but you could tell he was an old fighter too, because that same side, I don't know if it was a fighting injury or what, but he was missing that eye on that same side. So
wow, yeah, probably was then. Wow. So I know you like to do a lot of your own processing and stuff. I'm assuming that you did the same. You processed your own meat with this one, or?
I didn't, just because I was on a time crunch being down there. So I went with, actually, there's a place pretty local to Joshua Creek called Cow Creek Processing or Taxidermy. And they did such an awesome job being able to rush it. They did it almost overnight for me.
Wow.
Yeah, got everything, trimmed out, muscled out, packaged up, vacuum sealed, and frozen for me. And then they actually did some the Texas dry links. I guess it's supposed to be some specialty for that area of the country. And so I went with some of that and had them do that. And that took a little longer, but they shipped that to me, UPS. So that was good. The rest of it I took home with me on the plane. So that was kind of a first for me too.
I was going to ask you how you got it back, because we've had some people recently, like within the last year, that we've encountered or that we've hunted with. Mark, our giveaway hunter from last year, Todd, just a couple weekends ago, where it's been interesting watching them fly that meat back to their hometowns. So that was another question I was gonna ask, is how you transported it. So
yeah, I actually went out and got a real nice cooler with like the bear proof coolers with the latches on it, and brought that back. Had put what ended up being 100 pounds of meat in that cooler.
Wow.
Yeah, but I guess the thing that I learned that day was, Delta on their website says that you can fly with oversized packages and they can be overweight. And it says that they can be both on there, but if you're traveling with an oversized cooler, apparently it can only be 100 pounds. So I had to pull 30 pounds of meat out of my cooler while I was checking in my bag and shove it into my carry-on. When I'm in the terminal, pulling all my stuff out of my bag and putting all the clothes kind of around the edge of my carry-on and the meat in the middle, so it kind of act like a cooler. And I loved how I got home and everything was still frozen and still good. But man, that was kind of an experience.
Yeah, if it's frozen solid, man, it'll be all right, for a few hours in the air. So yeah, that's funny though.
Well, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I laugh because when I just always wonder what these airport employees think, because I'm told that they see stuff like this more than you realize, and I'm sure some of them do. But on the flip side, it's like some of them, man, like if it's your first day, I can only imagine, what you're thinking. Like when Mark and I, when we brought him back to the airport, the airport is 3 hours from the place we were hunting. So we kept the deer in the coolers until we got to the airport, and we're in the parking garage of the airport with people walking by to get their flights, cops driving by, and we're in the back of my truck in this parking garage moving whole quarters of a white-tailed deer out of the coolers and into these freezer bags and stuffing them in his suitcase. It was, I mean, we got some funny side looks as folks were walking by for sure.
Yeah, I was definitely getting some funny looks as I was shuffling stuff around in the terminal.
Yeah, that's always funny. So, kind of moving on from that, what I know you mentioned that you were running a 7mm and everything. Any other major gear considerations for this hunt that you went
on? No. So like I'd mentioned, 7mm shooting copper solids. That's just a personal preference. I've seen some studies of what shooting lead does and how it can fragment into your meat, and I just avoid that and shoot copper.
Yeah.
Also in Minnesota now, it's a regulation that we have to shoot non-toxic on public land. So as far as shooting copper out of slug guns and stuff like that, that's becoming mandatory here in Minnesota as well. So it's just kind of good common practice to have everything standardized.
Gotcha.
I guess other gear wasn't really critical. Spent a lot of time sitting in box blinds. So, just a camo shirt or a black shirt even, and water to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, a lot of camera batteries and camera equipment and things like that to be able to sit and shoot film and video and stuff like that. So.
Heck yeah. So you shot a buck and a doe. What's the taxidermy work going to look like when it's all said and done?
I was really close to doing, they call it a head-on hide for the axis buck. So like they do them for coyotes and stuff is probably a more popular way of doing it, but essentially it would be the antlers and the full stuffed skull attached to the cape still. But ended up just going with just a cape for both the buck and the doe, and then I did a European mount like I do for everything else for the axis buck skull.
Man, that buck would have made a very cool shoulder mount, in my opinion, looking at the size of them. But man, those axis on the Euro mounts, man, they look bad to the bone. It's pretty sweet. Yeah. Well, awesome. That's cool, man. Very, very neat. Any other kind of? I know you just killed those two while you're down there, but what other kind of wildlife did Joshua Creek have on the place?
Man, I missed a chance at a fallow. It was a chocolate fallow doe.
Ooh.
Yeah. Pulled into one of the food plots there, the feeders there, and happened to be one standing out. And it ran off before we could get set up on it. But we went and sat in that stand and never came back. And then saw it again later, but never really had a shot at it.
Gotcha. Well, cool. It's always fun to see what they have on these ranches down here in Texas. Always some cool critters running around. So.
Yeah, that one was actually a surprise for them. It must have come on from a neighboring property. It was something they hadn't seen at all before. So.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, experience that you'd recommend if somebody else had the opportunity?
Hands down. Yeah, and even more so if you're looking to take somebody who has never hunted before out. Joshua Creek's a 4-star resort. It's got swimming pool, hot tub, nice kitchen, big like cantina bar outside.
Wow.
Yeah, one of the nights that I was there, they did a big steak fry. They had live music, and yeah, it was.
Wow.
Man, I'm telling you, like, this place was really nice. It was compared to elk camp, it was totally night and day. Sleeping in air conditioning and beds and showers and hot tubs and yeah.
So how many hunters do they have in camp at a time?
I was the only one there.
What? You had the whole place to yourself?
I had the entire place to myself. There was like, so it is like a private game farm, right? And there's some people. Oh, hold on a second. I gotta let him out.
If you guys are watching the podcast video, rewind it a second. Dog just jumped about 4 feet in the air behind Drew. That was funny.
Yeah, no, like I was saying though, so it's a sort of a private game farm. They do a lot of bird hunting out there, and all these people that have memberships can go there in the summertime as well for the social events and swimming in the creek and all this stuff. So, there were some people there doing that, taking advantage of that, but for the most part, it was pretty quiet around there.
Yes, so many folks, man. I mean, you talk about just hunting ranches and stuff, and a lot of folks think of, fall or spring turkey or stuff like that, as and I'm sure, as we all would assume, that's a busy time for these outfitters and everything. That's when camps like that are probably full. But man, it just, hearing the little bit I just heard about it, sounds like they have a pretty well established year-round operation with a bunch of different stuff going on. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was talking to the guide, and he said something about, man, the number of birds that they hunt out there during an average season it's crazy. It was over 10 times the amount that we do at the game farm here that I hunt at in Minnesota. It just, the volume of that, in order to have that, the number of hunts that have to go out every day, that's pretty amazing. So it'd be interesting to see that portion of the business as well.
Yeah. How big is the place?
They're sitting on 1,600 acres.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy that they can run an operation like that with even just 1,600 acres. Like that's impressive. That's well managed, I can imagine. So
yeah, it sounds like, they run 3 hunts a day, very scheduled, very sort of regimented, and they just cycle through people, and sounds like they put a lot of birds up and have some really phenomenal hunts out there, and sounds like people have a pretty good time.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's amazing. Well, I know, like I mentioned at the very beginning, we want to have your guide and somebody from down there on the podcast. We originally kind of held on to this episode a little bit because we wanted to give him that opportunity and stuff, but we went ahead and jumped on at least you telling your side of the story. But we're definitely still going to try to have somebody from Joshua Creek join us on our podcast here to talk more in depth about that operation. I'm very intrigued by it for sure. Looking forward to hearing more about it. So
yeah, I think that would definitely be a great podcast to have those guys on. I mean, man, what a great group of guys, as far as, entertaining, nice guys, but super knowledgeable about everything that was going on. They knew so much about the deer. They knew a ton about all the different aspects of the property management that they were doing, and were just willing to share and talk about all that stuff. So yeah, it was a pretty enjoyable experience.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Well, man, I'm glad you got to experience that, have a, check off a bucket list hunt, off of your list and everything. That's pretty neat. And hopefully your next trip to Texas, we can get you on Texas dirt and shoot some pigs. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, and you talk about checking it off. If anything, all it did was make me want to go back and do it again. So
man,
I don't know that I checked anything off as much as I just found a new sort of passion or addiction. Yeah,
a new annual or biannual trip or something like that. Yeah, that'd be cool. It's funny how stuff kind of changes like that, because originally, that was my thought on pronghorn, years ago, was bucket list getting to kill an antelope, and now it's something that we put in for every single year, and yeah, same thing. It's just another itch that you want to scratch now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of antelope, you didn't get drawn, and I know Andy didn't get drawn, and I know Sam or Nick didn't get drawn, and I know a few of the other people that I've talked to are not hopeful that they'll get drawn even for the rifle hunt later.
yeah, it's man.
Sounds like they cut back hundreds of tags or thousands of tags actually, and just kind of really scaled back the hunt because of the drought out there.
Yeah, I'm pretty bummed, man. This is third year in a row now that I haven't been successful, so I'm pretty bummed about that. I'm gonna have to find something else to do out of state. Maybe even I really need to get online and look at some over the counter stuff. Just period end of story for some states, kind of in the north or even closer down here or something. Trying to figure something out because I'm itching to take a trip this year, man. I need to make something happen. So, but yeah, I'm same. I haven't heard of anybody being successful on that pronghorn tag yet, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds in future years. I'm hoping to make it back up there, hopeful every year, but so far no luck. So
Yeah, as disappointing as it is not to get drawn for that tag, I think it'd be even more disappointing to get out there and have the tag, spend all the effort getting there, and just not be seeing the animals because they're not around.
yeah,
Just competing with other hunters for animals that aren't even there would be super frustrating. So to that point, I'm kind of happy to hear that people aren't getting drawn because really the habitat and the population can't really support it from what I'm being heard.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of stories from property owners out there that this year's recruitment really struggled. Last year's recruitment was pretty terrible, and those young antelope just can't survive the drought like the older ones can. They can't make it water hole to water hole some of those greater distances that the bigger ones can. So they're really succumbing to that drought earlier on.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunate to see. It's a dry year for sure. So hopefully that gets turned around here pretty soon. So we'll see. Well, man, anything else you want to hit on or add before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, no, I don't have any other topics to hit on. I think we've covered it pretty well today.
Yeah. Well, again, good to talk to you about that. And actually, I know we mentioned in the previous episode you're going to start hosting some podcast episodes up there. When we got off on that little rabbit trail about blood trail, and you talked about a deer that you had an experienced blood trail in last year, and a guy that actually helped you track that. I believe you told me that he's going to be an upcoming guest that you're gonna record with up there in the north here coming up in the next few weeks. So looking forward to having that episode on here. Maybe shed some more light. Something we really haven't talked about a whole lot is tracking deer and stuff on this podcast. So that'll be interesting to have that content available. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's something that we just had the opportunity to start taking advantage of here in Minnesota last year. So it's something that we're kind of learning to work with as well up here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that podcast, getting that recorded.
Absolutely. Very cool. Well, for our listeners, thank you all for tuning in to another podcast episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. Wherever you might be tuning in from, we're on all major podcast apps. Follow and subscribe on whichever one's your favorite if you haven't already. Our podcasts are also available on the Waypoint TV app, which is basically a free streaming service for hunting shows and podcasts and stuff like that. So if you don't have the Waypoint TV app, make sure you go download it and follow Fall Obsession Podcast on there. Our podcasts are also the videos we publish on our YouTube channel, so be sure you follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have plenty of other types of content that we're rolling out right now. Our new series, Couch Chats, just kicked off. We got some awesome content, and we're developing that project and everything. Going to be some good discussions that we have through that. Our Texas Dirt series was something that I'm very passionate about down here as far as our land management down here in Texas. That's a series that we're cranking up season 2 on right now, so go check that out. And we actually have another My Obsession episode where we showcase some kind of down to earth hunters that you probably wouldn't hear about otherwise if we didn't get them on our My Obsession series and talk about kind of their journey and their story into hunting. We got another episode of that in the shoot right now and in the editing room. So looking forward to sharing that with you guys. All as I say, lots of awesome content on our YouTube. Be sure that you go subscribe to that. Fall Obsession Podcast is also on the Outdoor Call Radio app. Outdoors Dan over there is a good friend of Larry McCoy and the folks over at Elite Archery and everything. He runs a radio show and a radio app where he streams different hunting shows and podcasts and stuff from the industry, and we've gotten set up with his network, and so we're streaming every Monday on a loop on his app, so be sure you go download that app in your app store. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the normal spots. Go follow Fall Obsession. We post daily, and we got frequent deals and promotions and stuff that we're trying to run and roll out. We're also on Go Wild app, which is a censorship-free app for hunters and outdoorsmen. Be sure you guys check that out. And fallobsession.com is our website and the hub. That's where you can find all of our content. We've built a custom website to be able to share that in various avenues with you guys, whether it's our video series, our podcast, educational articles, wild game recipes, gear reviews, a bunch of other stuff. We literally have covered hundreds of different topics and discussion points in the outdoor and hunting world since we launched this thing. So head on over to fallobsession.com and explore. Check out our apparel, support a small hunting brand, and pick you up a hat or a t-shirt, something like that. We've got frequent deals on our apparel going on as well. And our podcast is driven by our friends over at Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Derek and Lacey over in Mississippi, they book hunts with vetted and trusted outfitters. Guarantee a good experience, so whatever you're looking to hunt, wherever you're looking to hunt, whenever you want to do it, give Derek a call. He'll help get you squared away, get you set up, and find something that'll work for you in your time frame and in your budget. Again, with a vetted and trusted outfitter. So go check out Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Did I miss anything, Drew?
I think you got it all.
Yeah, all in one breath. Golly. All right, man. Well, looking forward. We'll have to the next episode. We'll have some awesome content coming in the near future on here, and looking forward to you hosting some episodes up there too with some special guests. So those will be coming soon. So thanks for sharing your Texas experience with us today. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, anytime.
All right, guys. Thank y'all for listening. We're back again next week, as always, with another Fall Obsession podcast episode. We'll catch you then.